This one is so bloody good. Did I mention bloody? Welcome back to the channel, Book Dragons. I'm really glad you're here with me today. I have a book review for you, and I'm so excited to talk with you about it. Make sure that you like the video if you enjoy it. Please subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and hit me up on Patreon too if you'd like to support me there. That would be awesome. I do have a Discord as well that I would love to have you join. We talk about all different kinds of books there, and we can talk movies and all that good stuff. So check it out. Let me know what you think. All right. And now that that's out of the way, let's get right to this review. I recently finished reading Empire of the Vampire by Kristoff, and this was my first experience reading Kristoff. I've never read another book by him, and I've heard some mixed reviews about some of his books. But after my experience reading this, I will probably check out some of his other stuff because honestly, I was really impressed. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry about me giving away a bunch of major plot points or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you the basics of the story and some things you can expect. At the very end of the video, however, I am going to have a section where I talk about the quotes that really stuck with me from the book. So if you would consider that sort of thing spoilers, I'm going to have a timestamp for that so you can easily skip past it and go on your merry way without having to be spoiled by those quotes, okay? Years ago, the sun was permanently eclipsed, an event known as Day's Death. And vampires now rule the world because they don't have to worry about going out in the sun and being destroyed. Only the monastic warriors of the Ordo Argent of San Michon Monastery can stand against the terrors led by Fabian Voss, who is the forever king of the vampires. They must eventually find the Holy Grail of San Michon, which is the key to lifting the curse of Day's Death, because there is a prophecy. And I'm going to read you the prophecy. It's on the back of the book here. And that's all I'm going to say on that because it's, it would be spoilers otherwise. From holy cup comes holy light. The faithful hand sets world aright. And in the seven martyrs' sight, mere man shall end this endless night. And that is the prophecy of the Holy Grail. What or who that is, the prophecy is not clear. Eventually the goal is to end the curse of the endless night. One thing I really liked about this book is it subverts the typical vampire trope. So in this world, vampires may kill somebody and that person may never come back to life. They may never resurrect. They may never become a vampire. If they do, there are two different categories that they can fall into. And we're going to talk about the different tiers of vampires now. So there are the high bloods, which is Fabian Voss and his family, the Forever King and his family. Then you have the cold bloods, which are your standard everyday vampire. They can think, they can reason, they're basically human except they're undead, and they never age beyond the point that they died. It's just, they're your normal vampire that you would expect in a vampire story. Then you have the wretches, and the wretches are humans who took 2 or 3 days, maybe, or more before they actually resurrected and became vampires, in which case decay has already set in, their minds are gone, they become almost a zombie of sorts, but they're vampire zombies. And so that was a really cool feature in this book. I was not expecting it. I absolutely loved the vampire zombies. That was a lot of fun. I mean, you can picture battles in this book going up against hordes of wretched. It was just so much fun to read those sections. And then the final tier is the Pale Bloods. The Pale Bloods are half-breeds. They had one parent who is human and one parent who is a vampire. And so they have taken on certain gifts or abilities of their vampire sire, but they are still human. They have not fully turned into a vampire. They don't have to worry about going out in the sunlight, things like that. So the Ordo Argent from San Michon Monastery is made up of pale bloods. Every one of the warrior monks is a pale blood, and they are on this mission to thwart the Forever King in his goal of turning all the world into vampires, or into their thralls, or slaves, if you will. Vampires can feed humans some of their blood, but keep them alive, and they turn into their thralls. They turn into their servants that will do anything that they are asked to do. And that makes for some very interesting twists and turns in this story as well. As I mentioned, the Pale Bloods do take on traits of the vampire who sired them, and there are 4 different types of vampires as well, each with their own given abilities. So all of the Pale Bloods at San Michon Monastery bear the gifts of their sires, except for the occasional Pale Blood that comes to the monastery who is called a Frail Blood, because they were sired by vampires of such low stature that they didn't inherit any type of gifts or anything like that. They were just your common everyday vampire with no power whatsoever. So there haven't been many in history who have been Frail Bloods, but every once in a while they encounter one. And so our main character is Gabriel de Leon. He is a Pale Blood, and we follow his story throughout the book, seeing him from the time he first found out about his lineage to his arrival at San Michon, and to all the things that happened in his life that brought him to a certain point where he has now been captured by a faction of cold bloods. He is being held prisoner, and there is a chronicler who has come in to listen to him tell his story and to write it down for a particular vampire queen. And you might compare this to Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. You might also compare it to the Kingkiller Chronicle, which follows a very similar format. In this particular book, the interview is all taking place during one day, and I'm assuming the next 2 books will also be day 2 and day 3. That's my assumption. I don't know that for sure, but it seems to be the format that they're going for. So that is very similar to the Kingkiller Chronicle. There are several other characters in the story, one of which is Chloe Armitage, and she is a nun at the monastery when the story starts off, and she comes into Gabriel's life at different points in the story as well as Astrid Rainier, who is a bastard princess, and so she has been forced out of her family home to become a nun at this monastery so that she's out of the way of the actual royal lineage. And one other character I'll mention that figures heavily into the story is a young person by the name of Dior. And as I said, Dior's part is very important to the story. I'm going to leave it there. You're just going to have to find out what that is for yourself. The way this story is constructed is absolutely fantastic with the interview style narrative, and most of the book as a result does take place in the first person, with the interludes in the prison between Gabriel and the interviewer taking place in the third person. And I thought that was just a fantastic way to tell the story. So the world building was just solidly on point. The magic was quite interesting in this story as well. Some of the magic is faith-based with talismans that the different monks wear. There's also tattoo magic in that all of the Pale Bloods, as they advance in the ranks at the monastery, are tattooed with silver ink. And when they go into battle against vampires, they can take off their shirts and the silver will shine under their power, which gives them an advantage against the vampires. And this is known as being silver-clad. And the way the Pale Bloods enhance their power is by smoking a concentration of vampire blood. So they do that so that they can absorb the additional strength necessary without actually drinking lots of blood and turning into vampires themselves. So it's a way to stave off the thirst, because that is one major weakness that all pale bloods have, and that is the thirst. They do thirst for blood, and that condensed version of vampire blood helps stave off the cravings. One day, as they age, the cravings will just overwhelm them and they won't be able to take it anymore. But they try to stave it off as long as they can by smoking this concentrated version. So the magic was absolutely fantastic. The battles, oh my goodness, the battles were so immersive and had me on the edge of my seat every single time. It was just amazing. But so much happens in this story, told from Gabriel's point of view, and I just had such a great time reading it. I highly recommend this book. As far as my rank goes, you can probably guess that this goes in my soaring category. This book absolutely soared for me. It was magnificent. I didn't really find any flaws with it, to be honest. And this is easily one of the best books I have read this entire year so far. And that is really saying something. So if you have not read Empire of the Vampire, you absolutely need to read it. So I would love to talk with you in the comments to find out if you have read the book or what your thoughts are. If you've been on the fence about reading it, do you want to read it now? I'd love to talk with you in the comments below and on Discord as well. Feel free to hit me up there. And I am going to go ahead and get to some of the quotes from the book now. There will be a timestamp, as I said, that will take you to the end of the quotes, so you can skip past that part if you want to. That way you're not spoiled. And I'll see you at the end of the video. Okay? Here we go. Ready for some quotes. And this will give you kind of an idea of the witty banter that is laced throughout this book, and that also made it really entertaining. I didn't mention that in my main review, but I had a blast with that. The first quote here is, Gabriel tapped an empty leather pouch at his belt. "Behold the purse in which I keep my for what you think of me." And in this next quote, Gabriel is talking to Jean-Francois, who is the cold-blood vampire that is interviewing him. And he says, "Eat the same thing every day of your life, cold-blood. See how bored you get." And Jean-Francois studied his long fingernails, a finer argument against the sacrament of matrimony I have never heard. Silver Saint. Music is the truth beyond telling, a bridge between strangest souls. Two men who speak not a word of each other's tongues may yet feel their hearts soar likewise at the same refrain. Give a man the most important of lessons, he may forget it tomorrow. Give him a beautiful song, and he shall hum it till the day the crows make a castle of his bones. Ooh, that is one of my favorites. So poetic, so rawly poetic. I just absolutely loved it. Here's another one. Truth is, the questions you hear in the quiet are always the most terrifying, because most people never take the time to listen to the answers. They dance, and they sing, and they fight, and they drown, filling their gullets with piss, and their lungs with smoke, and their heads with shit, so they never have to learn the truth of who the they are. Put a man in a room for 100 years with 1,000 books, and he'll know 1,000,000 truths. Put him in a room for a year with silence, and he'll know himself. That is one powerful quote, guys. Young Bellamy was sitting up on the wall playing his lute, but not just a song, a spell, begun in the string-struck spiral of a melancholy refrain, but ending, shivering upon my skin and loosing the anchors on the whole of my heart. It was a song I'd never heard like of, a song that might make stones weep, and the wind cease its sighing for fear of missing one gentle, soul-sick moment. It whispered at the edge of hearing, and it pressed lips smooth as silk to your aching brow, and told you that though all things must have their ending, so too must then end darkness, and here, now, in this bright and blessed moment, you were alive and breathing. Another one of my favorite quotes. And if you're wondering, Bellamy is a bard, so he's been playing his music at this point in the story. And then this next quote is when Gabriel encounters the Forever King. I saw him as if he stood before me, his skin, hair, eyes, all bleached snow pale by years beyond counting and sins past reckoning, a youth, fey and eternal, beautiful and terrible, wreathed in an unlight so cold and bitter bleak, my heart felt frozen in my chest. And I heard him speak in my head then, across the blood-drenched snow between us, and his words were the song that would unmake the world. That is so good. One of the quips that they often bring up throughout the book is, one day as a lion is worth 10,000 as a lamb. And that's just talking about the impact of one moment of courage and heroism that will pay off thousands of days hiding and cowering in the shadows. The greatest lies are the ones we tell ourselves, the deadliest poison, the one we swallow willingly. And yet sometimes we clutch at those deceits the way a drowning man at straws, because the alternative is simply too awful to fathom. We believe in life after death because oblivion is too dark an abyss to stare into. We tell ourselves our Creator cares because the thought of a Maker who doesn't is too terrifying to consider. And standing there with Astrid trembling in my arms, I convinced myself Fabian Voss spoke truth, that he was only here for me, that ma famille were blameless, that he would let them go, because the alternative would have simply shattered me like glass to look at. And this final quote I'm going to share is a moment after Gabriel had smoked the sacred essence. And it says, the pipe was full and at my lips, and I breathed the color of murder into my lungs. All the night came alive, every sense aflame, the smell of dogs and fresh sweat, the sound of thundering footsteps and galloping pulse, the sight of the enemy before me and the blade I bore, now naked and gleaming in my hand. But with sinking heart I saw the last breath of sunset flee the sky, and my mind rang with the echoes of my childhood in the halls of Saint Michon. One of the first lessons I ever learned before my name became legend, and my love burned like summer flame, and my pride brought it all to an end. That's just a sampling of the brilliant prose that you can experience in this book. Some of my favorite sections of the book, and I had so many more that I didn't share here, and if I did, I'd be here for hours, and we don't want that. But I hope you enjoyed a sampling of the quotes from the book. And so that is the end of my review for Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you have read this book and you would like to share some of your favorite passages or talk about some spoilery things, that's great. I am going to put a spoiler comment section in the comments below. I'll have it pinned so that you can talk about all the spoilery stuff there if you want to. And until next time, guys, make sure you're reading more books. I'll talk with you soon.